Hello, I'm Alexander. My project is The Cabinet of Nobility. It was directly inspired by Balthazar Castiglione's book of the Courtier. In Courtier, a number of historical persons have a conversation under the auspices of the Dowager Duchess of Urbano. The conversation starts as many do at dinner parties before the group settles on defining the perfect noble. From there, a very wide range of topics is covered: love, war, politics, art, and more. The characters take different sides, resulting in an engaging discussion. Stories are told, polite arguments had. For a book written in the early 1500s, it's much more entertaining than you would expect. While I was reading it, I was struck with the idea of doing something similar for the SCA. I was grabbed enough to do my first draft, putting my characters in a conversation and starting them on their own discussion. My version uses anthropomorphic personifications rather than people, as I was also thinking of Pilgrim's Progress. Having a start, I began to consider how I could turn this into a reasonable A&S entry. It's easy enough to just lay down what a person should do, but I set a particular challenge for this. I wanted to use all primary sources. It's not the most widely looked into topic, but there are a good numbers of books. Rather than just taking what someone else interpreted, I went after the source material. So my hunt began. My first acquisition was Queen Elizabeth's Academy, followed by the Baby's Book. Both are compilations of shorter works. I kept looking. I found some in print, others I found online. I was fortunate to have access for a while to an academic account, so I was able to obtain a number of scanned books. There are also a good number of books on how to behave in period, for nobles and others. I discovered while doing research that a noble person was expected to have a wide range of knowledge, not just the fancy court protocols, but history, geometry, poetry. One book even has a section on anagrams. Of course, you know how to greet people, how to talk to them, dine with them, how you dress, how you relate to servants. Since this was a conversation for nobles, how to advise your prince, how to keep his secrets, and give him advice was also covered. So after a while, and a bit of hunting in the dusty corners of bookstores and the internet, I thought I had enough to give it a go. Here's a look at the primary source books that I've gathered. For each of the books I got, I took notes, marking down the page number for what the topic was, a summary or direct quote. I wrote them down. I had quite a lot of paper, so I ended up making a database where I could tag and search all of my notes. This became more efficient, and I could track down what I used as well. I also got a number of secondary sources, reading enough to gain a better understanding of how they all work together. Norbert Elias wrote a great series of books on this topic. I also got to go through the bibliographies to look for even more source material. I got a number of modern guides. It's fairly common for our medieval interests to carry on, and modern works show some of the same concepts still in use all of these years later. Here are the secondary and tertiary books I consulted as supporting material. Since I was doing this as a story and not a formal research paper, I wanted to capture the style of writing. Courtier was the inspiration, and I looked at Nenio, Whitsun, Galateo, as well as others for how this should be presented in period. There's also Decameron, which uses a similar format. Reading these put me in a frame of mind as I wrote. I wasn't using people for this. My characters were ideas. I ran into a problem. Pilgrim's Progress is a bit out of period. Fortunately, the Fairy Queen, Everyman, and some others use the same concept, as they are in period. So I covered my characters. Arabian Nights, Courtier, Nuno, Decameron, even the Canterbury Tales have a number of people coming together to tell stories that relay information in a framing sequence. So my basic structure could be documented as well. Then it came to buckling down and actually putting everything on paper. My first draft let me try things out. Now, if a character was going to say something, I needed to have that documented. So I decide on what the topic is, who's going to say it, and where in my research I have what they say. So I'm combining the ideas and assertions from one author or another. I work to make sure I mix them up a bit, not relying on a single source for too long. That gets tricky sometimes. There are a few favorites in there. I tried to make the conversation engaging, so I include stories that I either made up or brought in from other sources. Discussing hospitality, I use my favorite Greek myth, the source of Bacchus and Philemon, not from Graves or Hamilton, but from an actual period source that I found. There are some surprising things in my source material. One of my favorite examples seems just as relevant today. If you update things a little bit, Galateo admonishes us to, if you are having a conversation for someone, not to pull a letter out of your pocket and read it. Not at all that different from scrolling on your phone if you think about it. I've asked some nice people to do a reading of the first part of my work, so you can hear how all this starts out. I have a splendid idea.
Please speak.
What is it?
It will delay our meal a few moments, but the day is clearer and warmer than any of us expected when we made this engagement. Let me call my servants and have our luncheon set out in the garden. This day is too beautiful and the sun too grand to turn our backs to it.
What a splendid idea.
Yes, let us do so.
Yes, let us do so. I was struck 3 days ago during the tourney how Squire spoke so well to the Queen.
Verily, his words were as given to him by a great writer. Poet, were they yours?
Pardon, you addressed me?
The words of the squire to the queen at the last tourney, did you pen them?
No, so far as I know, the words were all his. As you say, well said and thought.
Perhaps this is a new poem for you to pen, poet, the admiration of a squire to a queen.
Oh, yes, and what a splendid poem it would be as well. You must show it to me as soon as you have written it.
That shall be done. Once I have written, perhaps I'll have minstrel sing it to you as you gaze off a balcony.
I shall be happy to do so.
Ah, here is luncheon. My servants have moved it here in the time we have walked around. Shall we sit at table?
Yes,
Yes.
I think we shall.
Indeed.
I think we all admire Squire for his good and kind words at tourney last. But what, pray tell, do you each think is needed for the estate of a squire?
A squire, I would be more agreeable to know the estate of a noble, for often has that question been on my mind.
Ah, here we have a topic which will give us more meat than any I can put on my table. Shall we not address that noble estate?
There is no lack of meat at your table, and good meat at that.
Strength has just given us a great example of the perfect noble by adding a great compliment to our gentle host.
You have my thanks. And Strength, please pass those grapes to your left. Thank you.
A good noble is cut from fine cloth. You must have quality materials to make a garment of any worth.
Yes, and nothing can hide the true makeup of a person. Quality is born within and shows throughout, and the seams are education.
Well, there's always more to learn. So, tailoress, by what do you define good cloth? In our society, we may have a pauper married to a king.
True. And by good cloth, I mean goodness of character. The inborn qualities we can admire: charity, love, compassion. This is found in many who join us, but in some it is lacking. And what you see them, you know their hearts are rotten, and they think only of themselves and never of others first.
So our perfect noble must think of others before himself. I know many who I will not name who do much for others, but I do not think their hearts are in their service.
They should be most kind to children.
Be it swordplay, grace, or knowledge, should think much must be mastered for perfection. Which shall we examine first?
Let us measure and cut a full garment in proper order. We dine. Shall our first measure be of this? For here we have people and food and drink, chance for entertainment and conversation. This is as a done seem, and tells much of the makeup of the man.
Or woman.
Yes, or a woman.
Indeed. I must confess that oft my first desire is to but sit, drink deeply, and eat heartily. 2 errors are here shown. First, you should wash the hands. Take good clean water and prepare with this. All should know this is not only for courtesy. To be at table, one should be prepared to be with others. By such, I mean cheerful, in good clothes, refreshed. Here you are to be in company of other good gentles. One should present as you would like you. To sit well, straight, and present properly. Next, it is not seemly to bolt to the table, such as uncouth. One should speak to others to be pleasant and kind to all. Your conversation should be hand in hand with your appearance, cheerful and light. I have the desire to rush at the table, and I fight it as I would fight an opposing army to defend my queen.
True, I oft wish not to wait, as I enjoy the luscious scents from the kitchen. But to rush is unseemly, as it is to gorge. But in company we must not be as ill-raised children lost in the sugar-plum forest, but be modest in serving, and place upon our plate no great weight, nor endeavor to stuff ourselves as that self-same ill-raised child.
True, there is a hidden grace that is too often forgot. That is the grace of drinking. Time and time again, I turn from courier to courier, only to see splashes and small rivulets.
Oh, as many grab the cup and handle poorly. I agree. To be gentle even with the cup will show the gentleness of the soul of the hand who holds it.
Much like a finely tuned instrument, even the smallest grace adds to the perfect noble and those who dine with him.
A good companion at table is a fine sauce.
There are times when only gentle words may be uttered, and in conversations such as we have, there is little unable to be cloaked in soft words, so we can cloak it in laughter. I attended the feast and was at a table with a brute and a child. Any other two could not have been more different. The child was well-mannered, silent, and demure. The brute was loud, unwashed, and no gentleman. From him came the most obnoxious smacking and grunting. None of the good points of a gentleman could be found with this brute.
If a good companion is a good sauce, this brute sounds like burning the sauce and serving it anyway.
And never was such a burned sauce so proudly served to noble persons and innocent children. And as this brute spoke loudly and chewed and did both at the same time, all would look to one another as we could plainly read the thoughts of others. A wish for silence. This brute had met a duke on the field, and the gentle duke had engaged to teach this brute some of the martial art. What a chorus! The duke taught me this thrust, this block, and more beyond the interest of all. Brute crowed of his new acquaintance, and you would think them to have become brothers on the field, as Brute spake on and on. I will have him teach me this, and the secret of this, and how to do this. And just as he uttered the words, I can ask him to teach me anything, a small voice joined the conversation. This little child said, and was heard by all, can he teach you to chew with your mouth closed? What a child! Brute stared open-mouthed in his first silence. Having no retort and being bested by a child, he left and we saw him not again that evening. Even a burned sauce can be saved, it appears, as the rest of our meal was.
There may have been other words to use.
Yes, but a great kindness was done for all at the table. It is always unwise to force yourself on others and to lean on the table and discomfort your companions.
And to be put in a position to be corrected by a child.
Indeed.
I hope you enjoyed that. I want to express my appreciation for all of those who put in time for that. I thank them, and I thank you for your time.